This is the Rebound Rundown. I'm your host, Paul Fritchner. Your home for college basketball in the Cincinnati area and across the country every Monday through Friday during the season. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Great to be joined today by Mike LaTulip, who was part of the broadcast crew for Friday night's Miami game at Toledo, a decisive win for Miami up there at Toledo. Also, Mike LaTulip, part of the Field of 68. Great to have you on here, recurring guest on the Rebound Rundown. And for anybody that's watching this on YouTube, make sure you go down into the show description and subscribe to the show in audio form. This is a daily podcast where you can listen to talk about Miami or any of the other Cincinnati area teams or national, if that's your style, every single day for your morning commute, short podcast. So make sure you check in with that, subscribe wherever you're listening. But Mike, like I said, it's great to have you on. I want to get right into it here with Miami because you and I were talking before the game about how this could potentially be a close matchup for Miami, right? You're still trying to figure out what you are without Evan Ipsaro. And all of a sudden, you come out and you just blitz Toledo in a game that was never close. Walk me through how you saw that game in your eyes.
Yeah, I thought leading up to it, the way Toledo had gotten into passing lanes had been disruptive. They forced 21 turnovers against Northern Illinois the game before. And their last three games had 20 points off turnovers a game. And so I thought, given Miami's turnover issues leading into the game, that could balance things out a little bit.
Yeah.
No, because it's just, I think you can try to prep for it. Just the movement, the cutting, the basketball IQ that Miami has. But until you're in it and until you see it in person, they're as much of a well-oiled machine offensively as anybody in college basketball, and just the how connected they are, and how I mentioned on the broadcast, but everywhere you help from, they cut from, they slip from. It's automatic for them, and then you add the shooting to it. And another thing I talked on the broadcast about was the cycle, like I call it the Miami cycle, where it's the shooting leads to the spacing leads to driving and passing lanes, the driving and passing lanes lead to high percentage shots, and then the high percentage shots lead to shooting, and then it starts all over again, and then you just kind of get caught in that cycle. So it was crazy. I mean, I looked up, it's 56-33 in that first half, and it was just the game was over before that, it felt like, but they just kind of take your soul.
And when you look at how Miami has played here in the last couple of weeks, I mentioned this on yesterday's show that I think Miami, before Evan Ipsaro got hurt, and I think you brought this up on the broadcast, I know one of you did, that they were 30th in the country in turnover percentage. And since then, they're 280th in the country in turnover percentage. So they've definitely seen a massive drop in how they've taken care of the ball. My question, though, for you is, do you think that's because they're playing better teams in the MAC than they played in the non-conference, and it's more challenging competition? Do you think it's because they are still figuring things out without their starting point guard? Do you think it's a combination of both? How do you see it?
I think it's a blend of all that. I think if you ask Travis Steele, and we talked about this with him at Shoot-Around, like, hey, who's kind of your guy out on the floor? Who's the extension of the coach? Every coach has a guy like that. And he's like, honestly, it was Ipsaro. That was kind of his guy. And so you have to replace that. But two, competition, certainly. I think that's a piece of it. But I think when you watch Ipsaro, this offense was always, with Ipsaro, without Ipsaro, this offense was always kind of equal opportunity. I mean, it was movement, pace, space. So it wasn't like Ipsaro was just calling for ball screens for 90% of their possessions.
Sure.
But I think the difference with having Ipsaro in there, and some of these other guys are good at it too, it's not the facilitating that they missed with Ipsaro, and it's not necessarily the shooting. He's a great cutter. Like he is a great cutter. And so that opens things up even more too. And then he's so active defensively. He's so good positionally, defensively. I think that's the thing that gets lost in more of the national conversation about Miami, is that they're doing this and they're on the cusp of an AP top 25 ranking without their point guard. And it's like Skaljak and Suter, who, when you talk about like, hey, we need a next man up to help kind of patch things together, those two guys, and particularly Suter, like those guys are as good as it gets as far as next man up go.
Yeah. So I had a voicemail into the show yesterday asking me for a panic meter of all the rundown teams. And when I got to Miami, 1 to 10, 10 being the worst, I put Miami at a 2 because they are 17-0. They are one of 5 undefeated teams in the country. They're generating national buzz. And the only reason I didn't put them at a 1 is because of Ipsaro's injury. Where would you put the panic meter for Miami? Do you think it's more significant than a 2 out of 10? Or do you think, look, they're starting to figure things out? Or do you think it might catch up to them down the line that he's not there?
No, I think the mark of a great coach is just being able to adjust. And the reason why I don't have any panic is because of I don't want to say 0 out of 10. I mean, just 0 out of 10 probably isn't realistic, but 1 or 2 probably. But we talked about it on the broadcast, and I think maybe the Milligan game wasn't maybe included in there, so that's why it was 48th nationally turnover rate with Ipsaro, 312th in the games without him.
Yeah.
But the smart thing that Travis Steele has done is say, okay, if we're going to have a spike in turnovers, we can't be 350th nationally in offensive rebounding percentage. So we have to get more back on the offensive glass to level it out. You can't be like, hey, we're turning it over more. Oops. This is a team we saw it against Toledo. I mean, if this offense gets second chance opportunities, you're kind of at their mercy. So I think that was, something that I saw when I was watching film, and I asked Steele about it. Was like, hey, is this a concerted effort to go to the glass more? And he's like, absolutely. Because you look at the ranking for offensive rebounding percentage, and sometimes you go, man, 340th or whatever it is, they just can't track down the ball, or they don't have the athletes. It's because they prioritize transition defense. So now it just flips a little bit. Sean Miller did this last year with Xavier. I mean, they was like Fremantle goes to the basket and like everybody else get back. Let's set our half-court defense, which is really good. And so now it's just finding that balance. So again, I don't have the panic there because of Travis Steele. And I also think too, when you're there at shoot around and you see this team up close, and I know you've gone to practice, they do a really good job. And I think this is needed when you're 17-0, when you're on the cusp of an AP top 25 ranking, when you're going to get everybody's best shot. Out of a lot of teams that I've seen this year, they straddle the line of loose and locked in. Like they find a way to straddle that line. Like their shoot arounds they get done what they need to get done, but it doesn't feel like militant. It doesn't feel tight. They have a way of kind of like ribbing with each other and kind of joking, keeping things loose, but also like everybody is on every single detail. And that's a really difficult thing to achieve for a collegiate program.
Yeah, I think the impressive thing to me is that even without Ipsaro over the last couple of weeks, you still have an opportunity every night to see who it is that's going to be their leading scorer. I mean, Brant Byers has been phenomenal. And I guess I'll start there. How good is he and how much of an impact player is he to this team? Because to me, watching them, he's just a total difference maker.
He is. And I think Brant's superpower is that he knows who he is. He knows he's a catch and shoot guy. Coming into that Toledo game, he had taken 91 jump shots, 87 were off the catch. He just knows who he is. He doesn't feel the need to I need to sidestep, step back. I'm a great shooter, so I'm gonna get up shot. I'm gonna get up a shot any which way. That's not who he is. He knows exactly where his bread's buttered. If you run him off the line, it's a straight line drive. He doesn't play with the ball. I mean, again, he's not. I think he maybe has 8 assists this year, less than 1 a game. But I would rather have that than a guy who tries to overextend himself and thinks he's a facilitator and really isn't. Now your turnover issues go up even more. So I think Brant sets the tone on that. And I also think he's just a really good, I mentioned this on the broadcast, but just a really good development story. He redshirted his freshman year. Last year came off the bench for the majority of the season, started 1 game, was 11 a game. And then now you set yourself up, because you trust the process to be a team's leading scorer and be an impact guy on what I think if they stay, I think they're probably a couple weeks away, maybe a week away from cracking that top 25. And he's a big part of that.
Yeah. I think if you can go 2-0 this week, which you have Central Michigan tonight, as you all listen to this, and then Buffalo on Saturday, neither one of those teams toward the top of the MAC, right? But if you can beat Kent State on the road next week, if Miami doesn't get in next Monday, you have to feel like you just keep winning. At some point, the wins accumulate. It's funny. I was reading, I wish I could give him credit. I'm trying to remember who it was that I read today. Somebody was talking about Miami's at-large chances. And at some point, right, the wins and the win total has to matter, and that no team has ever been left out with 30 wins. Yeah. And I know asking for 30 wins is a lot, but if Miami gets to that number, which is attainable, I feel like the way Miami season is going, it's not totally out of the realm of possibility. You can't drop games that you are supposed to win, and there are landmines all over the MAC, right? You can't have an off night in Ypsilanti. That just can't happen. But if you win the games you're supposed to win, I mean, you are set up incredibly for success this year.
I agree. And I think you've already played Akron. There's no return game. You played them once and you beat them. And that's Akron's going to be up there. I mean, that's not a hot take. They're going to be up there. They're going to be right there at the end. And so I think it part of me thinks that it's going to come down to, if you do lose twice in conference, to who? Yeah. And Buffalo right now is 3-1 in conference. I think they're 175 in KenPom. But you're also, I mean, the other thing to look at, I know we get wrapped up in the AP top 25 poll, but the net's also important. And I think last I checked, they were 58, which, there's been teams that have gotten in at large in like the 40s. I think maybe a couple in the low 50s. So you want to keep moving up the net, some of those predictive metrics. But yeah, I mean, you talk about some of the landmines. It's just you're going to get everybody's best shot every single night. And I think back to, and I know I don't want to dismiss the ranking either, because I know that's important. That's important to Miami fans. It's important historically, because as much as you want to like build a program and think you're going to repeat this success year after year, maybe in 1999 they thought in 2000 they were going to do the same thing, but instead it's been 20, 26, 27 years since there's been an AP top 25 ranking. So, I think back to I'm trying to think about comparisons, right? I mean, Wichita State with Fred VanVleet in his sophomore year, I think they ended up being 35-0. I think they went into the NCAA tournament 34-0 maybe. And then they won their first game, lost to Kentucky in their second game, but they also came off a Final Four the year before. So like you had that trust built up with voters. But go back to the 2011-2012 Murray State team. That team was, I think they finished 31-2. Yep. I forget what their seed was. They might have been like
they were a 6 seed, and it was Brian. I want to make sure I give him a shout out, and I'm apologies, Brian, if I'm mispronouncing your last name. Brian Ralph. I know you would know him, Mike, writing for Basket Under Review, but he wrote that today, and he specifically mentioned that Murray State team ended up getting a 6 seed.
Yeah, and that was Isaiah Cannon. Good team, and they won a game in the tournament as well. I think they lost in conference play. I believe they had one loss. Yeah, they had one loss in conference play because they lost to Louisville in the round of 32 for their second loss of the season. So I think that is probably the one that correlates the most. And that Murray State team, I think, was first entered the AP poll on whatever it was that year. It would have been like 2011, obviously, December 12th, I think it was. So they had just beaten, Memphis on the road, I think, in non-conference play. Yep. And then even a couple of weeks before that, they beat Dayton up pretty good. And so that entered them into the AP top 25 a little bit sooner than Miami would have. But I just think, I don't know, you get to 20-0, you get to 21-0. I think that's when you're going to see it. I mean, you're 29th technically now, right? You're right there.
And the thing that I think fans get caught up in, and sometimes you get too deep in the analytics, and I was very staunchly opposed to the AP Top 25 like 3 or 4 years ago, where I was fighting. It doesn't matter, right? It's the analytics. It's not in your team sheet. And I just get drowned out in the numbers. And I took a step back and I thought to myself, look, for the casual fan that's not getting caught up in all the analytics, the top 25, especially for a team like Miami, is very important because
Absolutely.
you're on SportsCenter, you're on every app that lists the top 25 scores, you're on headlines, you're in the AP write-ups. I mean, for publicity of your program, sure, it doesn't matter when you're getting selected to the tournament. Nobody's looking at the top 25. But as a program for Miami, it is a massive deal to be in the top 25. And so, yeah, I hope it does happen to them. One thing I do want to clean up and say, I mentioned a minute ago about the week. Buffalo is a top half of the MAC team. I think I kind of blew them off a minute ago. Buffalo's 3-1 in the MAC.
They did just lose. They just lost to Ohio, but that's a game. They have some good players. But no,
they do.
But to your point, man, like, hell yeah, it matters to Miami.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
Absolutely. I think because you got to think about it. If you enter the top 25 and this is the thing, and this is like the reality, I think, is if you enter the top 25 and you get to 26-0 or 25-0, when you do lose, it's obviously going to be hard to get back in this season. I think most Miami fans would understand the reality of that, whether that's fair or not. It probably isn't fair, but it definitely matters. Like, it may matter less to Kansas, who just dropped out of the AP top 25, but just having, I think, just psychologically, when you think about the selection committee, this team being ranked at some point this season, that's absolutely going to creep into their heads when they're thinking about at-large bids if you don't win the MAC tournament. But that's the last point I'll make there as well is, I talked about this at the end of the broadcast, but when you're in these mid-major leagues, yes, the AP top 25 ranking, and I'm speaking more from the team's perspective, does it mean as much to them as it does maybe the fans? It still means a lot, but you do know that it's a game-by-game building habits thing. And when you get to the MAC tournament, like, that's just what it comes down to. I mean, you want to be able to control your own destiny and punch your ticket in the MAC tournament and be playing your best basketball in the MAC tournament. Todd Kowalczyk and Toledo, they know all about this. 4 times this decade.
4 in a row.
4 in a row.
Yeah.
4 in a row. They won the MAC outright and did not punch their ticket. So it's like, you got to value the regular season while also realizing it's not like the end all be all, but it is, because it's seeding and it sets you up for the tournament. And it's like, cut it loose in Cleveland and see what happens. It's just that's why I go back to Travis Steele and his coaching staff and the way they keep them loose. Like, I think that is as important as anything, where they can get to Cleveland and just their mindset. They were in that title game last year. They've kind of been there before. They know what it takes. They've experienced the heartbreak. That should set them up nicely when it comes to March.
Last question for you here, Mike, because I'll have you back on before the NCAA tournament. We'll get more into, what all of these teams' prospects are for March. But for now, what you're looking for specifically for Miami over the next couple of weeks. And again, I have wondered to myself, and you're a much smarter basketball mind than I am, and that's why I'm going to ask you this question. I feel like maybe I've talked, and this is no disrespect to Evan, but a credit more so to the other guys around him for picking up the slack, that maybe I feel like I've droned on too much about losing him. Or is it that important? And like I asked you a few minutes ago, do you feel like maybe it is something that once there's more film out there without him, 2 weeks down the line, it catches up to you and you drop a couple of games just because you play in the MAC against some peer-to-peer competition? How do you see that playing out?
I think if they didn't have Peter Suter, I would feel worse about it. But that dude, just talk about a winner. I mean, he is everything that winning is about. He's a guy that had to accept greater responsibility. He had 10 turnovers total when you factor in. I believe it would have been the Akron game and then the Central Michigan or the Western Michigan game. He had 10 turnovers total in those 2 games. But he just finds a way to make winning plays, to take charges, do all those things. It's just, for him to be that guy that's like, probably the next man up for Steele to be like, all my trust is in you, brother. Like that's what gives me confidence in this team. Not to mention, I mean, the fact that Justin Kirby was redshirting, I mean, that dude, watching him on tape, seeing him in the Toledo game, that dude is going to be special, like really special. And he's like a baby deer out there, and he's like flying around. He's active. He's diving on loose balls. He's doing all the intangible things that freshmen usually don't do. And he's also super talented. And he comes from a winning program from Fishers, Indiana, at Fishers High School. So like, you do have winners up and down this roster. So that's another thing you fall back on, where it's state champion Peter Suter, it's state champion Ian Elmer, it's state champion Justin Kirby. All these guys have won state championships, and so they're going to understand like the sacrifice that's required to band together when you have a guy out like that and achieve the ultimate goal. So that I think, and the last thing I'll mention too is we've talked about their offense, but what they do defensively, the way they change coverages, they blow up ball screens, they'll double the post, they'll switch, they'll zone at times. And like, you can only do all that if you have a team you trust that can communicate. And like, there's just teams that can't do that, because it's like, they won't be able to handle us like this coverage this time, this coverage and that, or this coverage with this certain guy. And then when he passes the ball and the next guy comes off the ball screen, I can think and say, wait, this isn't a trap. This is drop coverage. They can do all that. That's all a superpower that they have. So I know that's probably way too long-winded, but I think that should tell you how high I am on this team. Hopefully they win tonight so that this ages well. But yeah.
Well, Mike, you're the best. That's why I have you on. I appreciate you coming on. Everybody listening, you can, watch Mike on CBS Sports Network. He has more games coming up. You can see him on the Field of 68. Follow him on social media, Mike LaTulip, LaTulip Mike, I think, on Twitter, and you can search there on his name. So I appreciate you coming on, Mike. Is there anything else that I didn't pub there that I know Illinois, if anybody's listening to this, it's an Illinois fan, you can find yourself there too, right?
Yeah. Illini Inquirer, do some film reviews, have a weekly podcast hit that I do there. But yeah, man, no, I'm hoping to honestly have a number of MAC wildcard games at the end of the season. So I'm hoping to get Miami again.
Great. Well, I appreciate you coming on. And again, anybody watching or listening to this right now, make sure you subscribe wherever you are watching or listening. And if you're watching and you want to listen, again, go down to the show description here on YouTube, and you can click on Apple, Spotify, any of the podcast platforms. It'll be there. It's a daily podcast here, so make sure you subscribe and you don't miss any of this going forward. Mike, talk to you again soon, my man.
Appreciate you, man.